Am I pretty? Good evening.
Six. I think I unmuted the wrong one. Yeah, 26 one. I don't know which one. Unmute number 6, please. That gives you a lot of leeway. Yes, it does. There I am. That high pitched sound is the amp back there. Hey Bill.
I already said good evening.
Happy post. I did too, but my microphone wasn't
We're
working.
lucky we're not drowning right now.
Yeah, it's man, pray for the people a lot, and it's wet down there.
Yeah, saw that.
Down at a little community called Walters, not far from there. They've gotten like 15 inches of rain in the last 2 weeks. In Walters?
Walters. Yeah.
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 Yeah, down there south of Lawton. I mean, it's been a lot. It's a lot.
My friend Eric is building an ark.
The river is
flat.
The river is flooding. They shut down 4 county roads north of town here this afternoon because they were here because they were overrun with water, like Road 415 to 419.
They even shut down 75 from 41st North to Skytook.
Bird Creek is out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bird Creek floods more than anything I think of. Yeah. There's a lot of water. A lot of water. We got, I think last week, the end of last week, I poured out, was it just Friday? Did it rain? Or did it rain Thursday? Was it just Friday evening that it rained?
I can't remember. Yes, Thursday.
But it rain at the end of the evening Friday. Anyway, Saturday, I'm pretty sure it was Saturday morning. I dumped out like 4 inches.
Yeah.
From my rain gauge. Did you dump any out yesterday, or maybe it was Sunday morning? I don't know. Did it rain Sunday? It did rain Sunday evening, right? A little bit. When did we do the? No. When were we doing yard work? Was that Saturday?
Yeah, Saturday rained.
So it rained again on Saturday.
Yeah.
Whenever. So maybe I did dump it Sunday morning, but I dumped like 4 inches of rain out of my rain gauge. Pretty sure I've gotten 4 inches more because I dumped like 3 inches this morning, and then we've gotten another. So.
Well.
Anyway, we spent some time last week on Matthew 25.
Yep.
And that was a little different than what we normally do there. Not what we normally do, but what we've normally heard. Would you agree?
Yes.
Normally we read those passages, or people preach over those passages, teach over those parables, and they immediately associate them to the end times, which I'm not saying they're not end times things, but Jesus was asked a very direct question, wasn't he?
Yeah.
About the temple, and pointed out how amazing it was.
Yeah, well, the disciples exclaimed how beautiful the building was, how well the construction was going, and how fine it was, and how
gigantic these rocks are,
and how intricate the stones were. So yeah, and they were quite surprised when Jesus said that it would be torn down and no stone would stand where it was. Yeah. And, which is, when you're talking to a bunch of young kids, they go, "How's that possible?
How's it possible?" Yeah. And they asked about signs at the end of the age. Yeah. And he begins to tell them, and then he tells these parables.
Yeah.
And really, the main ideas of these parables was the importance of preparation,
right?
Being faithful. Faithfulness is vital,
right?
In response to the chaos that was coming, and the rumors, and the mass hysteria stuff that was coming and
Yeah.
the uncertainty that they couldn't change. Preparation was important. Faithfulness.
Right. I think what surprised me most is that when we had to agree that we wanted to be left behind,
Yes.
we want to be part of the remain.
Yeah,
Of
we want
what
to be
of,
those
of,
that remain.
of the faithful. Yeah.
Because on multiple occasions it hints at Noah or speaks directly of the sign
Yeah.
of Noah, right?
Right.
And those that were carried away in the Noah story,
We're carried away in the flood.
they were carried away in the flood. Not good, right?
Right. And you wanted to be left behind with Noah.
So, yes. So when we're talking about this work of Noah and the remez that came from the first parable of preparation, and
Right.
it was really about the Assyrians coming and carrying some off and leaving
Right.
some behind.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to serving the Lord and being faithful to Him, we wanted to be those people who are left behind
Yes.
in the space where God's
And not
was.
well. We
God
want to
is.
be carried. We want to be left behind rather than being carried away by the evil
Yes.
that is to befall those who are not faithful, who are not
Yeah.
seeking God, who are not trying their best to understand why God has such a plan.
And it would seem that remez of the parable was, hey, this destruction has come before by a superpower that a ruthless group that was far off, and God's done it before, and Rome's right on the horizon.
Yeah, they're right around the corner.
Yeah.
Well, they were there, but people didn't realize that they could have been carried off.
Yeah.
By that. Yeah.
And then there was this parable about accountability. Accountability for caring for.
Yes.
Right? Accountability for the talents, and had the 5 talents, which
right.
The number 5 would be like the books of Moses.
Books of Moses, yeah.
The whole law.
Right.
And then we had the one with the 2 talents, which would be the
tablets.
The 2 tablets, and then the one with 1 talent, which would be just God, right?
Just God. So you've got to be faithful to 1.
Yes.
Faithful to 2 or faithful to 5.
Yeah.
Different talents.
Whatever your level of understanding is, be faithful in it.
Yeah.
That's what we got to. And it really comes down as a critique of the people who are caring for, because all of a sudden at the end of this parable, what we associate as the God character acts very much out of character and destroys people,
right,
for their lack of faith, and lack of caring. And it really comes down to a story, right?
Yeah.
That story of when King Herod the Great died,
right,
and his sons send homage.
Divide the kingdom.
The kingdom gets divided, and they send homage to Rome to try to gain influence with Rome. And the Pharisees also send an entourage.
Yeah, that's
to Rome.
That's curious as to why they even cared.
Well, they definitely didn't want to sit underneath.
Well, but they didn't want to lose. They didn't want to lose their power either.
Right, and so Herod Antipas, he ends up not recognized as a king. He ends up recognized as a tetrarch.
Yeah, tetrarch, or like a governor.
Like a governor, yeah. Though he operates as a king and a ruler and a person who is responsible.
He's got the title, but no strength.
Yeah,
power.
Nothing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has all the responsibility. Doesn't get the official title and power. He was angry about it.
Yeah.
And in his anger, he decided to kill the boys.
Yes, kill all the
children.
We'll
show you. I'll take away your inheritance. And they're like, well. And so there's going to be an accountability for for that. We're
Yeah.
going to have to give an account for how we care for the measure of faith in us
Right.
and how we deal with authority. And then the last one, the last of the Matthew 25 recap is the mishpat, the separating the goats and the sheep,
Right.
and how are we caring for
Yeah.
the
And I
aliens.
think that this is the one parable that when you read it, you really get to thinking about what you should have done or could have done or would have
Yeah,
done in your life even today.
yeah. Whatever you did to the least of these.
Yeah. You've done it to me.
Yes.
And I think that Christians in the modern day uh, are more considered. We call them hypocrites, but we know that that's just an actor. So they act one way, and they live another way.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of people, when they read that, it should get you to thinking that, oh gosh, maybe I should have done this. Maybe I should have done that. Maybe I should have cared more
Yeah.
at a particular time. Maybe I should have gone out and knocked on doors. Maybe I should have uh, done more than just read my Bible. Maybe I should have gotten into it, studied a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think it's a hard lesson to learn when you stand before the judgment seat when God says, I did not know you. I barely knew you then.
So now we're gonna end up in this. We're getting into the wee hours, the late hours of the Holy Week,
right.
and we're really closing in on some really key happenings. Um, Guy that I follow that teaches a lot of this stuff. Um, he has a hard time with this, and so he just reads it and throws in some commentary and recommends some books. We're going to spend a little bit more time.
Why would he have a hard time with it?
Because he wants it. He struggles with doing a very not even liturgical, but just informational reading and attachment and even academic uh, understanding of what's happening here. He struggles with that because it's so powerful and it's so meaningful that it's hard to teach academically um, and not want to really make a strong presentation. And it's just a meaningful. There's a lot that goes into it for him, but that's really what kind of he broke it down to. We're going to spend a little bit more time. He reads through all of 26 and 27, talks about some things, and then goes on again to the next week of teaching, and then asks a few questions. But he reads through all of 26 and 27 to get there. We're not going to quite go that far.
Well, I think that this is one of the most powerful chapters of
yes.
Matthew, and it's such a well-known story.
Yes.
I mean, everybody knows of Judas. Everybody knows of Caiaphas. Everybody knows what happened
And
in those last
and
days.
there's going to be some things that I think will be important to us. We can talk through them a little bit and slow down. We're not in any major hurry to get through all of Matthew, so we can take a few weeks. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take us, and I'm not really sure exactly how far we're going to get today, but I would like to get through. I mean, pretty close to 56. Maybe not all the way to 75, but we'll see. Couple things that's going to be important to us: the timeline, what happens here, what's going to happen. I mean, we know what's going to happen. Jesus is going to be crucified.
Right.
He's going to be buried, and then on the third day he's going to raise again.
Right.
We know that that's coming, especially being on the backside of Easter right now. Felt like we've had a couple of really good services Easter and the week after, even the week before. I thought Um, fantastic services, and so here we are on the backside of Easter now, literally, but in the story here, we're just before Easter, and there are some things that are coming up that are going to be important for us. One is when Passover happens. It's not like a feast or festival that demands a certain day of the week. It just falls in a regular calendar.
Yeah, in their calendar it falls
Yeah.
out.
So when Passover falls on a Sabbath, which it would have in this year based on the timeline of what we're looking at, if Passover itself happens on Sabbath, how does it change the timeline? Because typically Passover would be the sacrifice would happen that particular day, and they would eat the Passover meal the night before.
Right,
They would have their Seder meal
right.
the night before.
With bitter herbs and unleavened bread, and
Yep, first day of the unleavened bread.
it flows back to the first Passover in Egypt, and it has to.
Yes.
That's why I think is one of their highest holy days, or it is
Yes.
the highest holy day, in the fact that they're following their freedom event in Egypt
Yeah.
and the history that they've all learned over the years,
Yep.
and
The 4 cups and
yeah, and everything is very ceremonial.
yeah,
The
very
Seder meal,
liturgical.
then the sacrificial lamb at the temple, and
Yep.
then the lamb that's what they call the scapegoat lamb, or the
Yep.
everything is so ritualistic.
Yep.
And that's why it's so important that they follow this thing. And we talked about, well, go ahead.
And uh, so when the Passover happens to fall on a Sabbath,
Okay,
then how do we deal with that? Because we can't make that sacrifice on Sabbath.
right, because that we'd be unclean.
It'd be unclean and be unlawful.
Right.
I guess just it doesn't fit with that. So then what do we do?
I don't know. What do we do?
So typically what they would do is they'd move that back. They would do the sacrifice on Friday.
So they just shift the calendar a little bit.
Shift the calendar back. So then if they're doing the sacrifice on Friday,
Right.
then what do they do with Passover? The meal. Because the Passover meal would normally be that day.
Right. Or the
Then it has to be the day before, right?
right.
So now we're talking about Thursday.
Right.
So this is where we're talking. We're talking Thursday, and what's going to end up happening is, this is all going to happen on Thursday night, overnight Thursday, and into Friday morning,
Right.
based on what our calendar. But Thursday night, there's evening, then there's morning, right?
Right.
So the evening time of Thursday evening would be the
Seder
day
meal.
of Friday,
Right.
right? Yeah, it'd be the Seder meal, and then the sun comes up, and then in the evening time, early evening time, usually about between 3 and 4 o'clock, 3 and 5,
Right.
the lamb is going to be slain.
Right.
The sacrifice is going to be made, and so that's going to be Friday, and then 6 p.m. is going to come, and now it's going to be
Passover.
6 p.m. Friday night. It's already Passover, but 6 p.m. Friday night is the beginning of what? What do they call Saturday?
Sabbath.
Sabbath. So
Sabbath, everything has to be finished.
Yes, everything
by 6 p.m., give or take, the clock.
Yeah,
they call
give
it
or
the
take
ninth
sunset.
hour.
Yeah, the 12th hour.
12th hour.
12th hour. The ninth hour would be 3 p.m.
3 p.m.
Yeah, so
which is weird, but
it starts from it's from 6 to 6. So it'd be how that would work, because it's about sunrise to sunset in that time. So then we get that evening, would be Sabbath evening, Friday night into Saturday morning.
Right.
And then Saturday the sun comes up, we have the daytime. Evening and there's morning on the Sabbath day. And then 6 p.m. rolls around and the sun goes down.
Right.
And then the morning comes on Sunday morning. And Jesus raised from the dead.
Right.
So Jesus is in the tomb a little more than 36 hours.
Okay.
But it's still going to be considered
The third day.
3 days in
Right.
the Jewish calendar.
Right.
Because it happened on Friday during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's in the tomb Friday evening.
By 6 p.m.
Before 6 p.m. But at 6 p.m. Friday evening, it becomes Sabbath. So that's a whole other day.
Right.
So he's through all of that day. So he's,
and this is where you have to get the evening, then morning.
then
You have to turn
your
your head around
Yes.
a little bit
and
to
then
understand when the day starts. Yeah.
Then you get Saturday evening into Sunday morning. And on Sunday morning, you're into day 3.
Right.
And then, so one of the Gospels says 3 days and 3 nights. Most of the rest of the Gospels say 3 days. But they're all saying the same thing.
Yeah, they're parts of 3 days.
And it's just a little bit more than 36 hours, but it still meets the requirement in the Jewish culture for 3 days.
For 3 days, right.
So, so now Friday's going to be the sacrifice. So Thursday is going to be our meal day, our preparation day.
Right.
So our preparation for the sacrifice, not going to get the sacrifice, but the preparation for the sacrifice, and the Seder meal. So that's where we're getting to. Now we got to figure this thing out. So let's pick the story up in chapter 26, verse 1, and we'll keep reading.
And it came to pass when Jesus had finished all these sayings, talking about the parables we talked about in chapter 25.
Yeah.
You know that after 2 days is the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be sacrificed. And he's telling that to the disciples.
Yeah.
And
after 2 days, Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified. Like he is certain of what's coming.
Right.
There's no doubt in his spirit.
After 2 days, so he's talking to them on a.
It's Thursday.
Yes, Thursday. He's talking to them on a Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday morning.
Right. So they've.
So 2 days would be like tomorrow. Is
right.
basically what he's saying.
Right.
Passover's officially coming tomorrow because like today and then tomorrow. That'd be 2 days in their culture, how they'd say it.
Yeah. By their clock.
Yeah.
Because they went by
evening
hours of the day, evening and morning, and not by a calendar or not by a watch.
No.
Yeah. Then the chief priests and scribes assembled together, and the elders of the people, they all went into the palace to the high priest, who was called Caiaphas. Yeah. And they consulted that they might take Jesus subtly and kill him. But they said, not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar among the people. Well, the priests were afraid of doing anything because they didn't want to be unclean prior to this huge feast and this huge event.
And then they didn't want to upset certain people because they viewed him as a prophet, and they struggled with how do we deal with that?
Right.
We can't be responsible for that.
Right.
So then what'd they say?
Jesus was then in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper. And there came unto him a woman having or bearing an alabaster box with a very precious ointment.
Uh-huh.
Now, what's the name of that ointment? I don't know. There's a specific name for that ointment. It's very, very precious.
Pure nard.
Yeah, pure nard.
Uh-huh.
And she broke the alabaster box open and poured it on his head as they sat at a meal. But when the disciples saw that, they had indignation, and they were upset, saying, what is the purpose of this waste?
So they would see this maybe as a waste. One, because it's really expensive. Two, because it's an oil that's used as a perfume,
Hmm.
but specifically used for a declaration of extreme devotion.
Right.
And so, are they worried about how much it actually costs?
Well, that's what it would appear. They
Okay.
were. I don't think they understood the full meaning
Right?
of and why she would do it.
And they just came off this parable that said, as you did it unto the least of these, you did it also to me, right?
Right.
Like, hey, there's a bunch of least of these out there. Can't we take care of them? I don't want to be rude or anything, but
Well,
I also
that's
don't want to be a goat later on.
right. But they're thinking that it's a waste not to give it to the poor,
Uh-huh.
because it says so in the next verse. For this ointment might have been sold for a great deal of money and given to the poor. So they're listening, they're adhering to what Jesus had just told them. But then what happens?
Yeah.
And Jesus understood, and he said unto them, why are you troubled with this woman? She's brought a good work upon me. Now tell me why he would say that.
I think he's going to explain it.
Yeah, okay. For you always have the poor with you, but me you will not have always. For it is in that she hath poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Hmm.
So it seems like he's thinking, hey, I'm going to die tomorrow, because it feels like that's what he already said.
Right?
And I'm going to be buried in a hurry, so she's going to go ahead and anoint me and get me ready.
Sounds like it. Verily I say unto you, wherever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, then there also shall be that this woman has done, because it was for a memorial, or in remembrance of me.
Right.
Okay.
So he says, wherever the gospel is proclaimed,
Right.
they're going to talk about her
Hmm.
because of her faithfulness.
And they still do.
Still do.
Yeah.
Even today.
Hmm.
It's quite the impact, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, he's not predicting the future. He's just telling them that what he already knows,
Yeah.
that this woman will be remembered in history for the deed that she did to prepare me for my death.
And it would seem that Jesus is pretty aware right now of where he's going.
Well, yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's like a God thing that he understood, and I'm not saying it's not, but um, he was pretty aware.
Yeah. Don't you think he's trying to make his disciples also more aware
Yes.
at this time? Because they have been with him for 3 years plus.
Yes.
They have been seeing him, witnessing his miracles. They've been seeing him defy the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the Romans, everybody.
Yeah.
He's been giving everybody a hard time in the past, especially in the past week or two. He's been really creating. He's a disruptor.
And it seems like at least one of the disciples disagrees significantly with how Jesus is doing these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, one,
or what he's specifically doing.
and we all know is Judas, but one that we know that Judas had the purse strings.
Yeah.
He was in charge of the purse. So he might have been one of the more vocal, saying, why did you waste all this? We could have sold it. I could have.
Now what if it wasn't about money? What if it was about control?
On Judas's part?
Yes. Is it possible that Judas was perturbed enough by Jesus not managing the material goods and time and people resources the way that he wanted them to. And so he went to go take matters into his own hand. Had Judas lost confidence in his rabbi's ability to heal?
It would appear, but is it his rabbi's
Ability to heal.
to heal? I don't think so. Why would?
So
why,
did he? So he hadn't lost his belief in his ability to heal
or his miracles,
or his miracles,
right?
but he seems to have lost his
Grasp of the material world.
he seems to have lost his relationship, yes, with the material world, but with control, with how these gifts and things are being managed. I think it's managerial frustration. That's what I think. That's what it looks like. Because the way that Matthew tells the story is this expensive ointment is broken and poured over him as a sign of devotion and commitment.
Okay.
And the frustration is, why didn't we sell this and give to the poor? Well, what do you know about most organizations that give to the poor?
They do it as a charitable event, and they seek to be able to.
Do you know that statistically in America right now, if you give to a charity that gives to the poor or whatever, outside of a handful of
Very little of the money gets to the poor.
Very little.
Well, yeah.
Of that money, probably 60 to 70% never sees.
The poor never
see it.
Yeah.
So
it goes to administrative costs and salaries and other things.
So if a woman who would normally have offered this perfume as a gift, and then they would have sold it and used the money, don't you think that that would have an effect on Judas?
It wasn't his money to begin with. It wasn't his nard. It wasn't his.
You know, that's a good point. It's just hard to continue to live that way.
You mean as a disciple that has been taken care of from the very day that he signed up for the duty?
Yes.
Never went hungry?
That's right.
Never didn't have a place to sleep?
That's right. But
never
he definitely
never was on the outside of the happening either.
But it would seem that he is frustrated with Jesus' response to the breaking of this alabaster box of pure nard and the anointing, and Jesus' response to say this woman's name's going to be heard every time the gospel's told. And Judas says, then one of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, in verse 14, went to the chief priests and said, what will you give me if I deliver him over to you? So something is significantly changed in Judas. Does he have like a tax lien? You know what I mean? Like
yeah. I don't know if that is he looking for self-aggrandizement? Does he want to be more important than the rest of them at this point?
Yeah. I've been living off scraps for the kingdom to come, and he's talking about getting killed.
So my time of being taken care of is coming to an end.
Yeah, I gotta go pick up a check.
Yeah, how can I well, not fend for myself, but how can I get myself taken care of?
How can I get myself into a place of being cared for? Yeah. And uh, so he goes to the chief priest and he says, "What will you give me if I deliver him over to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver.
And then he started to hatch a plan.
And then from that moment, he sought an opportunity to betray him, to betray Jesus. I mean, he must have felt some kind of way about Jesus. He's frustrated. He was frustrated, it would seem. And says, okay, verse 17 says, "Now on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus." So this would be Thursday, right?
Right.
It says, "Where will you have us prepare for you to eat the Passover?" He said, "Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is here, and my time is at hand, and I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.' And the disciples did as Jesus was directed. Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover. And when it was evening, he reclined at table with the 12. And as they were eating, he said, 'Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me.'" Uh, one of you, and they were very sorrowful, and began to say to him one after another, "Is it I, Lord?" And he answered, "He who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It will have been better for that man if he had not been born." Judas, who would betray him, answered, "Is it I, Rabbi?" And he said to him, "You also sailed, or you have said so. Sorry, you have also sailed." I'm like seeing double. So 30 pieces of silver. I haven't found any significance to 30 pieces of silver where it would tie in the Old Testament.
You mean numerically?
Numerically, like specifically 30 pieces of silver.
Well, there isn't
to be found. There's no other reference. It's only here.
Right.
This is the only space where 30 pieces of silver. But he's so upset that this rabbi, who he has turned himself away from his whole life.
You're talking about Jesus has made Judas turn away
Judas
from his
has,
and we don't know anything about Judas, do we?
not much. No. I'm sure a quick Google search would get us more information that is true than is true, about Judas.
That we need to know, yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like if you do a Google search and you search, you're going to have, you got to take all of it with a grain of salt because some of it is just not.
Yeah, but there's probably 1,000 commentaries on.
Yeah,
on
and
Judas,
some of it's just not true.
Speculations.
Like if you watched, Jonas, didn't we watch, what was that show that we watched about the Bible? House of David, yeah. Was it all true? Was it all about like the same stuff that's in your Bible? No, there's a lot of stuff that wasn't true, right? Yeah, it even like, yeah, it was. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that just, and so they took all these interpretations and made it like David was an outcast and that he was an illegitimate child.
Wow.
I mean, that's how they portrayed him. There's a lot of it. It was just like, so I'm sure we could search some stuff up on Judas, and there's some stuff that's just not true and far fetched. And
well, what is true is that Jesus did take him away from what he could have been doing.
Yes.
And took him on this journey that lasted 3+ years. and brought him to a point where he was so um, dismayed
Yes.
and
Mhm.
disenfranchised. And I wonder if he felt like he was on the outside because Jesus hadn't given him uh, more, not responsibility. I'm thinking more credit
Yeah.
with handling the money. He was upset. He was upset in such a way that he decided to betray his master or his rabbi.
So there is a commentary here that says in the Old Testament, the 30 pieces of silver was the penalty paid by the owner of an ox that gored a slave to death.
Wow.
From Exodus 21:32. Equivalent to about 4 months' wages for a laborer, about $7,500 in modern terms. Uh, and so it says this meager sum suggests the low esteem in which Jesus was held by both Judas and the chief priests.
Well, you think it could have been they just equated Jesus with the fact that, well, yeah, he's not much worth more than a slave.
Right.
And that could have been they could have looked at the chart and said, okay, yeah,
It's
here 30
strange.
pieces would that'll do it because he's nothing to us.
And it's strange, like, that they would associate like, in the Jewish community, he's viewed as a prophet and a rabbi.
Right.
Like, these are very,
Well, we've seen other examples where if we say this, then well, people will uprise him because they hold him as a prophet. So
yeah.
they knew beforehand that he was
So in the Jewish community, very, like, very important, but the positions that he would be honored as are prestigious.
right. Well, as a rabbi, well, that was the most prestigious position you can hold in a community.
Yes.
Be the priest.
And so I wonder if it was like this lack of value, lack of concern about finances that really drove Judas upset and frustrated and over the edge.
It could be. I mean,
It just seems so odd.
I still think that if he got to thinking about Jesus dying, who's going to take care of me now is just as important as the lack of finances. And to go to the chief priests and say, what will you, because he said, what will you give me to betray him?
Yeah.
And they come up with this chart that says, well, he's worth at least as much as the slave that gets gored. Whether it's the slave dies or not is doesn't say. But here's your chance to get 30 pieces of silver, Judas. What do you do? And he takes it.
And so um, he's looking for an opportunity to betray him. He's gonna eat Passover. Um, uh, we've It was evening. They reclined at table. He tells them, "One of you is going to betray me," and they're all like, "Is it me?
Right.
Is it me?" And finally, Judas says, "Is it I, Rabbi?" And he said to him, "You have said so." So they're just eating. So let's talk about the Seder meal real quick and see. There's 4 cups that go on the table. Did you
Right.
notice? 4 cups or 4 pitchers of wine,
Right.
and it's all shared.
Right.
The first is put on the table, and they're going to share it. It's going to be poured around for everybody. It's going to be shared. It's going to be before the meal.
Right.
And the second one is going to be shared during the meal.
Right.
Um, and so they're eating, and then typically the third one. What happens with the third one?
They pour it out.
And the fourth one?
Is the one that they share again.
The fourth one's just left.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to be
consumed when they leave the door open and they leave an empty seat specifically closest to the door for the Lord to come and visit.
Right.
But they don't drink the last one.
No.
So they've had the first one, and they're sharing the second one with the meal.
Isn't the third? Am I right? The third one's poured out.
Third one is typically poured out. Yeah. Now, as they were eating, Jesus took bread, and after blessing it, he broke it and gave it to the disciples, and he says, "Take, eat. This is my body." And then he took a cup. And when he had given thanks, he gave it to them. What cup are we on?
That would have been the third cup.
We're on the third cup.
Third pitcher of wine, yeah. So they didn't pour it out. But in the normal Seder meal, they did pour it out.
Yes.
So he's creating a new significance to the third cup of wine or the third pitcher of wine.
Yeah, because the third one was poured out because it was supposed to be the pouring out of
the sacrifice
of the
blood.
sacrifice was coming.
Yeah.
Huh.
It had to be pretty significant because all these Jewish kids knew it.
And he says, "Drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." So we're carrying on this poured out. "I tell you, I will not drink it again of this fruit of the vine until the day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." Is he taking this vow of I'm fasting wine? Is that what he's saying?
I don't believe so.
Then what's happening here? Is there a significance of? We talked last week, didn't we? We definitely did. What was the first parable last week? You remember?
Last week, as opposed the wine, the bridesmaids.
What was our conversation? What's significant about the brides?
Half of them were ready and half of them weren't.
Okay. What were they waiting on?
They were waiting on the bridegroom to come.
Why were they waiting on the bridegroom to come? What told them that the groom was coming?
A shofar horn.
Okay. I like that. Absolutely. Shofar horn. Why were they even waiting in the first place? Was it a covenant that was made?
Yeah, well, the bride accepts the cup.
What is
from the groom?
So the groom has a cup.
Right. He passes
handed to him by who? Who gives him the cup?
His father.
The father gives him the cup.
Right.
And the father puts wine in the cup.
Right.
What's the groom do?
He offers it to his bride first.
He drinks it first.
Right. Well, he takes a sip and then he offers it, and then she has the option at that point to refuse it.
What does he tell her?
I'm not going to.
This is my covenant. This is a new covenant.
This is a new covenant.
I make it with you.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to drink it again
until you say so.
Until we're together.
Right. It's just all part of the wedding ceremony.
It is the covenant, the commitment of marriage, right?
Because at that point, technically, they're, according to Jewish tradition, they're already married. They're married at that point.
They're legally bound.
Once she accepts the cup, like I said, she has the option right then and there to refuse it. And if she does, then he's got to start all over again. But she'll take it, drink of it, and signifies her acceptance of the covenant that he made.
What's the church called?
The bride.
What's another term for
The bride.
the bride of Christ?
Right.
Jesus at the Passover takes that blood, that wine that be poured out,
Right.
and he takes a sip of it,
And he makes
pushes it over across the table to the disciples and says, "Drink of it, all of you, because this is a covenant. I'm making a new covenant with you." And I'm not going to drink again till I get to drink with you
again with my Father.
in my Father's house.
And
Seems pretty significant, huh?
Well, the significance is that
What would that mean for Jesus then? Like if we're talking about us as the bride and the representation of the full body of Christ is those 12 disciples sitting around the table with him.
right,
Even the unfaithful one,
right, everyone is included,
even the one who betrayed him.
right,
After he drinks it and hands it off and they take a drink as well,
right.
they've accepted what?
The promise and the covenant.
The covenant.
Yeah.
Which means Jesus, as the groom, is legally bound and responsible for his bride.
At that point, yeah.
From that point on.
Otherwise, they're legally married in the Jewish tradition. In the eyes of God, they're legally married.
So
at that point.
Jesus then, if we're following this legal process and our understanding of the legal process, Jesus committed himself fully bound, fully committed under the law.
Right.
To all people. From that moment. Before he went to the cross.
Right.
He was bound. I feel like that's, if we could just find the time to just sit in that space, that it was before the cross that Jesus committed
Before
himself.
the blood was shed.
Before the blood was shed.
Right.
Before the price had to be paid, he said, I know it's coming. Because he's already told them, I'm going to die.
Right.
I'm going to die tomorrow. Like we hear it as 2 days, and they're like, well, he's got 48 hours. No.
No, it's tomorrow.
Today is day 1, tomorrow's day 2. He knows it's coming because he knows it has to be fulfilled before the Passover.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is just an awareness that he has. And he's willing to commit to it. To be bound by it. By their law. By their rituals. By their purposes.
Mm-hmm. And you can take the wedding commitment even further.
Yeah.
Because he says, in my Father's house. Because at that ceremony in a normal Jewish family,
yeah,
the bride price has been paid.
Yeah.
The groom offers the bride the cup. They are officially married. But at that point, he has to go prepare the room that's added to where? His Father's house. And until that's approved, nothing can happen.
So are we looking for Joseph then?
Pardon?
Are we looking for Joseph?
Joseph,
that's his dad, right?
No.
Oh, different dad.
We're looking for God.
We're looking for God. So, how's he going to get to God's house?
He has to ascend.
He has to ascend.
Right.
Man. That seems pretty powerful. Like he has the intention before the cross.
Right. To commit to the covenant.
To commit to the covenant that says, I've got to welcome my bride into my Father's house. Now, there's a problem here, and he knows it, right?
Right.
What's the problem of taking his bride to his father's house?
His father has to approve the kingdom that he's built or the house that he's built.
His father's got to approve the expansion.
Right.
But there's also another problem, in my opinion. God is holy.
Right.
And unholy
won't fit in heaven.
Won't fit. So there's a gap.
Right.
Like Jesus has promised himself to a bride that has no hope of meeting the standard that it takes
Right.
to be the daughter of God.
Okay.
Right? Isn't that?
That makes sense, yeah.
And so he's made this commitment with this cup.
Yes.
And he knows what that means as Passover comes.
Right. There has to be a sacrificial lamb.
Man.
And he's it.
So this is why I think this is so interesting. And then it says, and when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. What?
I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know what hymn you're going to ask me to sing.
Like, do we have a good? Is there "I'll fly away, oh glory"? Is that what we got?
The power in the blood.
There is power, one working power. The blood in the blood of the Lamb. Okay. Like, is this where we're going? Like,
I don't know. I don't know what.
At the cross.
Is there any reference to what hymn they might have sung? Because it says hymn, and I don't know if that's really a hymn.
Probably more of a psalm.
A psalm, yeah.
A psalm.
So do you already have this psalm all picked out?
I don't, but I know. I've looked it up. It's kind of in the range of somewhere between Psalm 113 and 118. Yeah, ask away. Yeah.
And until.
Yes, the marriage supper of the Lamb. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's what he's talking about. Oh man, be about as diverse a family as you've ever seen, but as committed a family and together, as diverse and together and unified a family as you've ever seen. Yeah. It's going to
be a big room.
An incredible experience. Oh, man. Whew. So he sang this hymn. Historically speaking, the Seder meal, the post-Seder meal hymn would be somewhere like singing something between Psalm 116 or 115 and 118.
Okay. Well, there would have been a psalm at that point from the ancient times.
Yes.
That they would have carried forward because the psalms are written.
Yeah.
By David, or the majority of them.
Yes.
So there had to be at some point some special verses written to commemorate the Passover meal.
And then when they had sung that hymn,
right?
We assume it was a psalm. They went out to the Mount of Olives. Seems like campsite. This is home base for the week.
Right.
Mount of Olives.
Where they've been there before. Yeah.
And then Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered." And that is cited from Zechariah
13:7. Yeah.
13:7. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee. Seems we missed this.
We talked about this, or we talked about this Sunday.
Yeah.
Why is he going to Galilee?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where he did all of his preaching, though.
After I'm raised up, I'll go before you to the Galilee. And they're
That's a long way from here, bud.
like, we got to go that far? Like, is there a reason?
Yeah, what did you say on Sunday? The 6-day walk
It's a 6-day walk
from Jerusalem to the Galilee.
Yeah. And then unintentionally took a shot at Lauren about not being a runner. Oops. Yeah. And then verse 33, Peter answered him, though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away.
Yeah, this is some of the most.
This is the.
It's a very familiar.
Yeah.
Area of this chapter.
That's not me. They'll all do it, but not me. I'm older and wiser.
Right. Which is he's oldest.
Right. He's like in his 40s or something.
No, probably 22,
21, 22, 23, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Such an experienced and wise old soul.
Yeah.
Those other teenage boys.
They were just little
16,
kids.
17, 15, 16, 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
Not quite 20, though, clearly, because
right.
Didn't have to get a drachma coin for him. Just
right.
Just Peter and Jesus.
Right.
So not the middle-aged men we think of in all of our
not the
documentaries.
Not the bearded old grizzled man that
more like Peach Fuzz.
If that much.
Yeah. So and Jesus says to him, truly I tell you, this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times.
Once again, he denies that.
Peter says, no. Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. And all the disciples are like, yeah, absolutely. We're with Peter. We will die with you before we deny you. We'll see if that's true here in just a little bit. I want to finish here in this section. Then next week we'll actually get to the betrayal and the trial. But this week I want to finish here because I think it connects some things that are important to us. So then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and that's just a garden.
Yeah.
It's going to be basically at the bottom of the Mount of Olives, right outside of town. There's going to be a little garden area. And he said to his disciples, sit here, and I will go over there and pray. And take him with him, Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, that'd be James and John.
Mm-hmm.
He began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Will you remain here and watch with me? And going even a little bit further, he fell on his face and he prayed, saying, Father, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. What cup?
What do you mean, what cup? This covenant?
It seems that the covenant cup is a heavy weight to bear, just not long.
Right.
You ever had buyer's remorse? I'm not saying that Jesus is. I'm just saying you ever.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you ever committed to something, even
now there's a law that you have a 3-day waiting period on a major purchase.
You know that people go and they buy cars and they make a commitment to and they're like really excited, and then they start to feel the weight of
how much it's going to cost for the next 72 months
or
more,
40 years, or how long are they? What is it in Canada? Is it Canada? Their home loans are like 50, 60 years. Is that right? Can you imagine? Can you imagine what type of commitment it is to make a 50-year home loan?
It's
I'm
hard enough
ready.
it's hard enough for 30 years
That's
in
why they
my
don't.
age.
That's why they don't tell you how much you're paying over the whole life of the loan. Like nobody tells you. What are the things that they tell you when you're trying to buy a car?
Your down payment
This,
is
yeah. And here's the deal. Here's the deal we're going to make you. Just with this much down, we can get your payments to this. Does that make sense for you? And they teach you, like, in the car selling business, they teach them to negotiate, to ignore the trade value and the value for the car. They want you to ignore those things. They want you to get focused on
your payment.
your down payment and your monthly payment.
Mm-hmm.
And their trick is, well, if $450 a month won't work, what will work for you? Now, $450 a month at 60 months is not good for you. What number will work for you? Well, I can do 350. So 350 at 72 months. They didn't change anything. They just made you pay more over. Yeah, they just stretched you out over time.
Yeah.
And maintained more profit for them.
Right. Because their profit is in the interest.
And then you get done and you sign everything, and they pop the balloon. Yay! Take your picture and send you out with a nice clean car, maybe full of gas. And then you get on the way and you're like, start looking through that payment book and that's a lot of payments.
This is payment
What's happening?
Payment one of 10.
The finance department guy gives you the papers. Good luck. And then you're looking back through it and you're like, I'm paying how much? Sum total of your payments, you take your total payment, you multiply it times however long, and you're like, I just paid. Like I'm paying $370 for 72 months. So I'm paying $24,000 for. I thought I was buying a $17,000 car, but I'm paying $24,000 for it. What just happened here? Somebody got the good end of this deal, and it was not me. But there's a weightiness to that cup that Jesus drank.
Right.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that the weight of that cup is significant.
Yeah.
Even sorrowful unto death.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think that was the... No, I don't even want to speculate. There was a human part of Jesus.
Well, there's definitely a human part, right?
Yeah. He knew what he was to suffer.
Mm-hmm. And there's even times I think there's times that the Holy Spirit moves us and leads us and takes us to a place, leads us through a process of saying yes, and then we get in the middle of that space and it's hard.
Yeah, of course.
We recognize the challenge that stands before us.
Mm-hmm.
I more am inclined to sit here and say, this is Jesus crying out to God saying, give me strength to do your will.
Yeah. Sometimes people are not willing to make even, I can relate to the fact that in Evangelism Explosion, there's a required 13-week course.
Yeah.
And you have to start out and listen and learn and memorize. And at the point where your instructor says, now it's your turn, you can feel the weight of the past X number of weeks weighing on you, saying, can I do this?
And you're terrified you're going to mess it up.
You're absolutely terrified with it. And there are people that cannot make it past the third or fourth week because they realize what's coming. They've seen their instructor, their teacher, their rabbi going forward and talking with people, total strangers.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of people drop out of that. But after you make that first committed gospel presentation, everything else is it's downhill from there. You can really get into it because led by the Spirit, you understand what they're going through as well as what you're going through, and
Yeah.
it's a very weighty decision.
Yeah.
So that's the only time that I can say I committed to that 13 weeks, and then I committed to 13 more weeks of training. Then
Yeah.
I committed to more 13 weeks and teaching others. And the weight doesn't get easier until
Yeah.
you know that your pupil has passed that time.
Here's my question for you. How many times have you butchered the presentation of the gospel and someone gave their life to Jesus?
Lots.
A lot. Yeah.
Almost every time
Yeah.
you foul up somewhere with a not a misquote, but then you get it out of position,
Yeah.
and how you do it doesn't matter.
And it's the thing, it's like, I'm not enough.
Yeah.
God, you've got to be enough.
Yeah.
And I feel like even for Jesus, that's still like,
Yeah.
it's even this cry out to God of like, if there's another way, like this cup, I committed to this cup, and I let the Holy Spirit speak through me, and I'm committed to this thing because it's right.
Right.
But just because it's right doesn't make it easy.
Of course not. But then he says, not my
Not
will,
my
but
will, but
yours.
yours.
That's what's important.
Yes. Yeah.
If,
Holy Spirit, do the work.
if anything else in this
Yeah.
brief garden scene means anything, not yours, but his.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how we should look at it.
And then I want to keep going through this real quick, but praise about that cup, pass from the never. And then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping.
Yeah.
And he said to Peter, "So could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." And again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done." He's still there.
Yeah.
This is still a cup. Still a cup that he's struggling with. The weight of this cup is intense.
Oh, yeah.
And then he's going to come back. And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words again. 3 times he prays to God about taking this cup. But every time he surrenders to God's will.
His Father's will, yeah.
That seems strange. We struggle with this, don't we?
Yeah.
We even talked about it on Sunday. We get so caught up in unbelief.
Yeah.
We get caught up in, God, are you sure? Feels like the Son is doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like the Son is calling out. He's drank this cup. He's offered it as a covenant. He's bound. He's legally bound.
Right.
I made this covenant commitment. Now the weight of this covenant commitment is not comfortable. Not only is it not comfortable, it's life-threatening.
Yeah.
Says, God, if there's another way, take this cup from me.
And this is even after he said to the disciples, I'm going to die.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing that's interesting when he's asking about God taking this cup from him, helping relieve him from this covenant. He's not going to consult a rabbi for justification for a divorce.
Right. Not going to go get a get.
Not going to go get a get. He's not traveling across town and saying,
And talking to another rabbi that might agree with him.
Yeah. I mean, she burnt my biscuits and ate them. I'm telling you, it happened. When did it happen? I'm not sure, but will you give me a get for it if I can find a witness? Just consoling the Father. He
Yeah.
knows he's legally bound.
Right.
He knows he's committed under the law. Still trusting God. And then he came to the disciples and said to them, sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. They're going to leave the garden.
Right.
They're going to head back to the mount. Because that's kind of where base camp has been, the Mount of Olives.
Yeah.
So they
Assuming
have to be.
They probably didn't go too far from the.
No, they weren't. They weren't far from base camp.
Mhm.
Otherwise, how's Judas going to find him?
Right.
Judas knows where home is. Knows how to get back to
Yeah,
where
I've
they've
been there
been.
several times, just on the other side of the garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the road to Bethany. Right? Just
Yep.
outside of Bethany. Supper seems to be pretty significant, huh?
Yeah.
That cup it's a heavy cup. And the weight of that cup came. It seems like I feel like when we're talking about Holy Week, this is a piece that is easy to be overlooked.
Yeah.
Because he offered this cup, took a drink of this cup, and committed in it. So he's legally bound to us
Yeah.
before the cross. And that legal binding of the cup is the anguish that he carries in the garden that puts him on the path to the cross.
Right. And I think that he might have felt a little bit of, I don't know. He asked the Peter, James, and John to come with him to be with him as he prays.
Yeah.
And 3 times he goes back and finds them asleep, and finally he just says, "Sleep.
Yeah.
Don't. I've taken care of it. I've worked my way through the
By the time he gets
anguish.
to him, number 4, he's like, all right,
Let's go.
time to get up. We got to leave here.
Mm-hmm.
Time's here.
Yeah.
Time for
He did
praying.
he did feed him a big meal,
Mhm.
had him drink wine,
Maybe
then
they
walk
had like
to the garden.
Maybe they had like a turkey coma or something.
Yeah. Could be. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We're not making light of it. It's just that
No.
those guys probably had been up all day anyway
Mm-hmm.
with the parabels, and they would been following them around. They get a meal. And I do believe that they knew the importance of a Passover meal.
Mm-hmm.
They'd been through them before.
Yeah.
But the significance that their rabbi is saying to them, I'm going to die in less than a day.
Yeah.
I'm going to be no more with you. And then he tells them, one of you will betray me. So they've got all of these doubts. And then, you got Peter, James, and John in the garden with him. And the other guys, they said, you guys kind of hang back here.
Yeah.
I just want these guys to go with me.
And here's the thing that's really incredible to me. When a healthy person says, I'm going to die, that's hard to believe. It's hard to get your head around.
Well, after them seeing for the past 3 years all of the things that he's done that a normal person can't do, or they've never seen it before.
People have a tough time with sick people being okay with their own mortality. Like there's never a place, like even people who have been sick and their health degrading over time. It's still hard. It's hard to get our head around, and it's hard to deal with that loss because it still feels as 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 long term as the decay is. It still is a loss. It's still hard to like. There's never a way to be ready for it.
Well, you think you can prepare, and trust me, I'm in that stage of life now. You can think you're prepared.
Yeah.
You can discuss the mortality. You can discuss the plans. You can imagine how you'll react. You can, but there's never a way to say, "Yeah, I'm okay."
Yeah.
Trust me, it's gets worse
Yeah.
the longer you go.
Man. Supper carries a cup of commitment. And that commitment that Jesus is making is it's a heavyweight.
Yep.
And he hasn't even gotten we haven't even gotten to like we're in the 11th hour of this thing and it's still like this is tough. And I can understand not wanting to academically go through it, but I mean there is significance. Now again, I'm not certain of the 30 pieces of silver. I know like what we talked about but the cup is
Yeah, I think that the cup is probably the most important um, phase of what we've just talked about. We're almost ready.
yeah, it's the weightiness of the cup and how it changes. Like this is why I think that like we talked about this as the institution of the Lord's Supper or communion. Say what? The institution of communion. This is why communion is such a significant thing because it transformed what the connection of the Passover
Right.
was because it changed that third cup.
Well, I think anybody that listens to this tonight, the next time that they do take the communion supper, they will think to themselves about what Jesus did
Yeah.
in making the covenant commitment.
Yeah.
That little cup of wine that you drink, you're making a commitment to the Lord at this point.
Yeah.
Saying, this is truly my heart. This is truly my way of thinking. This is truly what I need to do, regardless of the hardship that I may face.
And it's that commitment of brideship.
Yeah. Well, the importance of
I will legally be committed to you. I will legally be bound to you. I will legally, willfully be faithful to you. And rejecting all others, be faithful only to you.
Yeah, surrendering to that point.
For all the days of my life.
Right. Next week's going to be good.
It's going to be good. The betrayal and the trial. Hopefully we can get through all of that next week.
Right.
Come back and join us.
Yeah. Good night.